Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, May 19th, 2026, and time for me to remember that yesterday's show, when we were playing a video clip from C-SPAN with Greg, we cranked the audio all the way up, and I believe I said to myself to make a mental note to turn it back down. Well, you know how those kind of notes go. The mental ones are the worst. The written ones are only slightly better. And so as I was turning things on today, I realized, hey, everything seems super loud. Maybe I'll turn down the volume in my headphones. No, well, that's not really doing it. Oh, yes. Okay. So I think I'm still not back to the levels. I made a note to myself. I made the mental note to turn it back down. I think I made a written note what the levels were that I had them set for before. So, okay, I think that will help a little bit. I think the real tip-off was it's like super distortion on the ding. We really redlined on that one. So, all right, sorry about your ears, everybody. Justice says the levels are 5 by 5, but I think he means 500 by 5, probably. I don't know if there's, like, radio lingo for I hear you, but my ears are bleeding. That's entirely possible. Anyway, wow, lots to talk about today. And, of course, most of the rest of the world now waking up to the 1776 settlement, I guess. We had some early warning on that one. So, you know, that was nice. Although I don't think we called it out quite as early as I had hoped to do. But it was on everybody's radar screen. You guys are pretty voracious readers on your own, I think. And you just come here to, in some cases, to nod along and say, yeah, I totally read that. But in other cases, maybe not. Maybe we surprise you. But that's top of Justice's list of what he's thinking about early in the morning. And by the way, do you know that he has clear thoughts about what's happening in the world at, 5:45 a.m. his time? I just want to point that out. That's an amazing feat. Happens every day. The big, yes, right. Yesterday's note was that the big bash is all done there. Grandson Isaiah all graduated now from Lewis and Clark Law School. And the big news, Gunner is home and happy to be, I guess, out of the car. So, all right. The cold lingers and everything is complicated by the new disaster at KITM World Headquarters. There are a couple of looming disasters as well. I need to check in with Scott. I have, I think, notes to myself. My note to myself says that Scott might be out today too, but Scott's notes to me, I don't think, say that, so I think I may be mistaken. I'll have to double check. But only 2 days made it to the calendar, yesterday and today. Now, it makes sense that he'd maybe be out today, too. Maybe, in fact, he did notice that to me, and I failed to take notice of his noticing it to me. I like using notice as a verb there. It's terrific. Is that he noticed it to me. No, I mean, in that sense, it's a noun describing the document that he sends me, which is incorrect. And that's why it sounds so weird. Anyway, in-house editor leaves on a long weekend, meaning beginning on Wednesday, even longer than a congressional weekend, for a short trip away. That means, so not only a couple of summaries and also a little bit of editing, although I got used to the editing a little bit during the trip, but I want to do it the official way, and that's difficult. But we have decided that we don't like running water anymore, and we don't want to have it in our house, or at least temporarily that's the case. In an attempt to do a DIY fix on a shower that was alternating improperly between hot and cold, we thought people, probably you too, have had some relatively good success on minor repairs following YouTube instructions. Although with the rise of AI, I start to wonder whether it's really not a great idea to take YouTube instructions sometime. I don't know. I guess like at some point they could just do an entire AI slop video. These don't look like AI slop videos. These just look like regular slop videos. And but you could do an AI slop video that just gives people the wrong instructions. I don't think this one did, but what we're dealing with really is a very outdated fixture in a, we'll say hastily, if not exactly cheaply constructed home in the first place. This wasn't a high-end home. It's a townhouse. And so they were building them as quickly as possible. And while the construction has been relatively good, there are definitely a couple of things where we've noticed over the 30-plus years now that they've cut corners on construction, let's say. Chief among them, there's no individualized water cutoff for most of the major fixtures. If you need to work on a shower, you can't cut off the shower. You got to cut off water to the whole house. Just not a big enough house, I guess. You can fix that if you got the skills, and you can, it's not even all that skilled. A plumber would say it's an easy job. Maybe not me, but you can, cut into the, shut off all the water, cut the pipes downstairs, and install, what are we even talking about? Stoppers of some kind. Damn it, now I forget. The valves. You can install valves, shut-off valves that just individualize the different fixtures. We've never had call to do that, but now we do. So anyway, we were trying to take out what they used to call, and I don't even know if they call them anymore, the balancing spool inside the shower fixture. And these fixtures also are, builder grade stuff that, was, I don't know whether they ever really intended it to last forever anyway, but a manufacturer that's since been gobbled up by another manufacturer, and so it's not even clear that you can get the parts that you need. But home and life advice for all of you. This is actually something I discovered the hard way last time and then did not remember to tell anybody as it dawned on me that I already knew this. If you are going to undertake a plumbing project in particular, I guess electrics and plumbing kind of run the same way. If you realize you need to do it, if your start time is the afternoon, you will fail. That is basically it. Plumbing supply and electrical supply outlets that have the stuff that you really need that they don't have at your basic Home Depot, Lowe's kind of thing. They can get it, but it takes a couple of days, right? Those places close by about 4 p.m. and sometimes earlier than that. So if you discover that you're missing a part or you need a new part or you broke the part that you were trying to replace, whatever it is, and it's a specialty part, then you're out of luck until the next day. So start your projects in the morning or not at all is my advice to you. Anyway, the balancing spool, such as it is, there are replacements for it, but there was also the advice that it doesn't always need to be replaced. Sometimes it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit and put back in, and it's the cleaned up and put back in part that I have doubts about. Now I think, the parts are failing. I think they're just old. They need to be replaced. The original manufacturer doesn't exist anymore, Sterling. It's been bought by Kohler. Kohler has replacement parts, but they're not quite the same. And so the videos are a little off. I don't understand. I don't have one of those parts over there. Well, you wouldn't because, et cetera, et cetera. Anyhow, so that means the water's off and has remained off because while we were able to get the faucet or the tap back together enough such that there wasn't any more leaking going on, and there was some leaking going on, and you can see it downstairs from where it was happening. Anyway, now that we got that on so there's no more leaking outside of the shower, it goes into the shower, but it doesn't turn off right anymore. So the only way to keep it from just flowing and flowing and flowing is to turn off the water to the house. So we filled up some tubs and buckets and all sorts of things, and we're just sort of working old-fashioned style, and that slows everything down and takes our eye off of the news ball for a little while. But it's time to get back to it. However, let's see. Yeah, it says discombobulated things even more than they are usually discombobulated. I don't think that's an unusual construction. I can work with that. such that, let's see, thankfully I've remembered now I need to set all my alarms so that I can do all my breaks, and now we can roll. Yes, top on Justice's list, where I assume they have water and electricity and everything, the 1776 fund, which actually I guess we should probably avoid that. I'm sure they're desperate to have it called the 1776 fund. If I'm not mistaken, I think Philip Bump on the Blue Sky, and people have been begging me to stop calling it Blue Ski. Like, who did that? I can't even remember which of the Knicks did that anymore. But not to, I don't know what, perpetuate that dumb name. But the Blue Sky is, I guess, appropriately ironic in calling it that. Philip Bump, I think, was the one who said, you may have problems with this idea of paying the insurrectionists, et cetera, or the president authorizing theft for himself personally from the Treasury. Those are problematic. I don't like them. You don't like them. And in fact, the president doesn't even like it enough to say that's what he's doing. He knows people won't like that. And by the way, it's that, as he said the other day, it's one of those 90% issues, right? He believes things that the problems he hallucinates in life, men playing in women's sports, that's a 90% issue. 90% of the country, but more, believes in stopping that. That's one of his favorite lines. I would have to imagine that even he believes that 90% of the country is against the president being able to order the Treasury to pay him money personally. But here we are. And I think he probably doesn't actually believe that. He may believe that MAGA loves it, and some of them might, especially the ones that get money, of course. But ordinarily, if you put the question directly to people, should the president be able to order the Treasury to just cut checks to him? No, but that's what's happening anyway. There are some weird technicalities about it. I guess we could spend some time exploring it, and maybe we should. But that will only, I do warn you, you will be more knowledgeable about exactly what's happening, but it won't stop it by itself, and you'll just be more frustrated in some way as you watch other people report on it. Like, for instance, calling it the 1776 fund. As Philip Bump pointed out, all of that may be bad, but it does have a patriotic name, so it's actually good. He used a patriotic number, so now it's fine. And I think they're genuinely depending on that to save them. If we start calling it the 1776 fund, yeah, we may be. It's good shorthand. I know what you were doing there, Justice. And it by itself, it highlights one of the extra outrages about it. If you're on the right side of history, saying trying to whitewash this thievery under cover of, I don't know, nostalgia for the revolution because did we decide it was the semi-sesquicentennial or something like that? I think we predicted correctly. They're just completely abandoning that word and calling it America 250. But in addition, so what is that? Two things Trump has going on. One, a compensation fund that he's going to fund from the Treasury with $1,776 million, $1.776 billion. And the other, looking into issuing 250 pardons for America 250. Not only arbitrary, but arbitrary and irritating. All right, what else is on the list here? Oh, okay, yeah. I guess Elon Musk in the news in the last day, failing miserably in a lawsuit situation. A story actually I haven't covered or read all that much about. I was just satisfied to see people say neither side was worth cheering for in this, but if one of them has to lose, let it be Elon Musk, I guess. Was basically the reaction. So lots of other stories to get to and add to the mix. On the compensation slush fund, I thought it might be interesting to note. Let's see. There's a couple of quick hits and then some more in-depth stuff. The quick explainer from Roger Parloff, also featured on The Blue Sky, has a link to the actual agreement, I guess, if you want to call it that. And once again, the technicalities are such that I just, you just don't know exactly how to regard this. Yesterday, the news broke that it was a done deal, finalized. The settlement had been signed. And there's a lot of legal gray in this by design. And so technically, I think, I don't know whether it's technically correct to refer to it as a settlement in that normally a settlement comes, what we understand to be a settlement comes, well, maybe it's not, it doesn't always have to happen once the proceedings are initiated and they come, but if it happens once proceedings have been initiated, initial pleadings have been filed, dates have been scheduled for court hearings, etc., and then you come to a settlement, and then I guess the court supervises the settlement. Usually it's a done deal if the two parties being sufficiently adversarial, and that's the problem here, come to an agreement. The court usually says, great, the preference is for private settlement of disputes. We're here for when you can't get to that. And we take the hard cases. But if you think you've got an easy case of it, unless there's something so egregious, and there wouldn't be ordinarily as between true, proper adversaries, they would come to a compromise of some sort. But if they don't, a court can intervene. And here they could intervene if they say, well, this is not a properly adversarial relationship. You know the root of all of this. Trump basically runs both sides of this lawsuit. And if you allow it to go all the way through the system this way and settle, every time, and I guess you are going to allow that now, you can simply write yourself blank checks or just print money. It's a license to print money. I think we mentioned it that way the other day. And then we realized, I guess, this guy with his unitary executive theory actually probably does think he does have a license to print money. Then maybe he can just order the Treasury to order the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to print money for him. He certainly thinks he has the right to strike coinage. And he may also think he's got the right, I'm going to print $1 billion Federal Reserve note with me on it. He might be able to order that to happen. I don't know if anybody would ever recognize it as legal tender besides himself, but I guess he could then order the Federal Reserve to break it into small bills for him. I don't know. Anyway, so Roger Parloff, one of the Lawfare editors, senior editors, as a matter of fact, according to his Blue Sky bio, just did a little 5-post thread about it, but it linked to the actual document, which appears to memorialize an agreement between the parties, but prior to actually any real court action here. And I did see somebody say it's not a settlement per se, it is they're just dropping the suit, but they're dropping the suit in exchange for a private agreement with the quote-unquote other side in the putative lawsuit, such that it's not so far into the process that a judge would absolutely be on, I guess, unassailable ground to say, well, hold on a second, there's the matter of my approval in all of this. It hasn't gotten to that point, so they're looking to dodge any judicial review of the agreement by coming to an agreement themselves prior to the involvement, real heavy involvement of any court. So here we are. The Trump / Blanche, he's, I guess, supposed to be the other side of this. We are, of course, talking about acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. And I wonder if, I guess I'm a little bit curious, just because she's been dumped, would Pam Bondi not have done this? Is this part of the reason for dumping her, or was it just you dumped me for some other reason, but I totally would have done this for you? I don't know if it makes a difference. The Trump-Blanche quote-unquote settlement, right, fund, purports to be challengeable only by those who colluded to create it, and highlights from the actual document, which is here and available. I might even run through it just because it doesn't look like it's all that long. It's just egregious and will probably infuriate you if we do read it. So that's always our aim. But here what he highlights is the enforcement, part of the enforcement clause here that says this settlement agreement is enforceable and challengeable solely by plaintiffs, Donald Trump, defendants, essentially Donald Trump, and the United States. And in Donald Trump's mind, that too is Donald Trump. His second post, Rogers, reads, to help themselves to nearly $2 billion of our tax dollars, claimants present evidence to the wink wink settlement fund that they were victims of lawfare or weaponization, terms that are, of course, nowhere defined. And here the highlighted part is this little subsection C that says, to be eligible for relief, a claimant must assert at least one legal claim stating that the claimant was the victim of capital L lawfare, which is, by the way, the name of Roger Parloff's publication, and or capital W weaponization. So, random capitalization in here, although that's very frequent in legal documents and sometimes actually means something. I by no means am under the impression that Donald Trump wrote this settlement agreement. The fund is administered by, as you know, 5 people chosen by I thought by Trump, but actually chosen by acting Attorney General Todd, whom he calls Todd, I love you, sir, Blanche. That's his nickname for him. And they are removable at will by Trump. The highlighted sections, of course, actually saying that. But if we're going to read you the settlement, we'll get to that again later. Next, Roger Parloff states the procedures for processing these claims can be as secret as Blanche's appointees choose to make them. And lastly, the identities of those given our tax dollars and how much will be kept secret from us and known only to Todd, I love you, sir, Blanche. That's it. And then a link, once again, to the actual settlement agreement, if it is one. So yesterday's news was all about it's a done deal, it's been filed, it's signed, here's the agreement. And I'm still a little bit confused, and you should be a little bit confused still. Are we saying, like, as I said on the Blue Sky yesterday, look, you say there's a signed settlement agreement, but Duffman says a lot of things. Oh, yeah. And those of you old enough to remember the reference, great. Those of you not, or old enough to not know the reference because you were old when The Simpsons came out and you didn't watch it. Basically, it comes down to the Trump and paperwork, man, I'm telling you, refrain, as we always go to. There's almost always a fatal mistake somewhere in the paperwork. If it's important and it involves Trump, it won't have been done correctly. So in this case, the technicality is the fact that the Department of Justice announces it used to mean, yeah, that's pretty official. You could probably take that to the bank. Now it does not. And I don't know. Is this just the Justice Department putting out a thing that says the great leader says we want this to happen, so it's happening? Or is it in fact something that, I guess we're not sure whether it's at the stage where it does or doesn't need to be reviewed by a judge. But I mean, it's not that they haven't involved the courts. They filed the lawsuits. I mean, maybe it's up to the judge to whom the case was decided to decide whether or not this is something they can do unsupervised. And so what we might have is a purported agreement to settle a putative lawsuit that they claim doesn't even permit of any judicial intervention, but judges may disagree. So they have jumped the gun on those sorts of legal conclusions before, only to feign outrage when they were called out on it. So we don't know if it's a done deal. We don't know if this is a real thing. We don't know if this is binding. We don't know if they intend to live by the terms of this agreement. And we don't know if they think they can threaten a judge or a judge's family into changing the terms of the agreement later on. I guess what this came down to was prior to the release of the text, I was sort of wondering whether or not this lawsuit, this putative lawsuit, was really dismissed. And if so, or was it dismissed with prejudice, meaning you can't bring it back, at least in this current form. this is the final settlement. Now, this document purports, without saying so, to in fact adopt that standard, to say this is the final settlement there, this extinguishes all claims of this kind. But since they never really defined what the claims really were in any usable way, I don't know what it precludes. And also, if a trial judge was to read this thing and say, yeah, this does extinguish your claims, sorry, I can't help you, like he exhausts the $1.776 billion fund and or just says, I want more, can he just refile the same claim? The document appears to say no. If a judge were to say that the document appears to say no, but then they threatened to kill the judge, or they just went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, or the first time around the judge was Aileen Cannon, does it mean anything? And the answer is, I don't know, because there's no rules anymore. I mean, that's basically all I can tell you about it. But the document does appear to want to wrap itself in those colors and make it look like this won't happen again, at least not on this front. But, the other alternative, of course, is they just sue for something else. And it doesn't really matter whether the claim is legitimate or not if you can just order the other side to say that they believe it's legitimate and they surrender, and that's the end of it. So, it's still the same license to print money, essentially. All right. Over the break, which is now coming up, I can scroll down and see how long this agreement is. I mean, it's not very long, but it does seem kind of dumb to say, yeah, it's only 9 pages. Let's all read 9 pages together. But I should remind you that one of the pages is intentionally blank and another is a signature block. So maybe it's not so bad. I'll review. We'll be right back.
Hi, Kagro in the Morning listeners. This is Rebecca Romans, longtime listener and longtime supporter of the show. Do you love your non-corporatized, completely independent, commercial-free Kagro in the Morning show? Do you stand out among the crowd at the office water cooler when discussing current events because of all the up-to-the-minute news you've been brought by David Waldman? Then it's time to give back a little. David relies on contributions from listeners like you and me to keep this show on the air. Patreon.com is among the easiest ways to make secure recurring monthly donations to support the show. Patreon.com/KagroX will bring you straight to his donation page, where you can sign up for any convenient tier you like. A mere $5 a month. You'll never miss it. Works out to about 25 cents a show. That means that David is making 12.5 cents an hour, which, by coincidence, is exactly what the GOP wants to lower the federal minimum wage to. Once again, David is ahead of the curve. If Patreon.com doesn't sound like your kind of thing, there's always PayPal, or even the Square Cash app. Any way you choose to donate, please choose to donate. And thank you on behalf of David and the rest of us listeners. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, yeah, I've looked it over, and it's not all that long, and we'll read until we get to a point where we say, maybe we're not getting anywhere. But there's some detail that should probably be on the record, including, of course, the style of the case right up front. Of course, it is President Donald J. Trump et al., plaintiffs, versus Internal Revenue Service et al., defendants. But remember that this whole thing is about, this is Donald Trump acting in his personal capacity. I mean, he is President of the United States, but ought you to include the that's, of course, supposed to remind everybody just who's who and who's boss around here. But the et al.'s being his kids, the Trump Organization, a couple other plaintiffs, et cetera, et cetera. It's just odd that you throw in president there if it's supposed to be a personal suit. It reminds everybody unnecessarily that it's the president versus himself if you're a unitary executive theorist, president versus IRS. It is styled a settlement agreement, though there are those who would dispute that name. And it is, of course, filed in the Southern District of Florida. And I don't know how much has been done in handling the cases by any assigned judge or who was assigned, but I do remind you that Aileen Cannon is, in fact, one of the judges of the Southern District of Florida. They may or may not have filed in her Fort Pierce district, or division. But it's pretty likely, and of course, almost. I don't know if he's in the same way with all of the judges of the Southern District of Florida, or if for some reason, because they knew they were going to pull this trick, they didn't bother to try to steer it to Elaine Cannon or not. I'm not sure. It's got a case number. I'm not sure if typing in, if Googling the case number will give us information about the judge or not. Let's see. It's case number 1:26. I'm going to do this by hand because it's a document cloud and I can't copy it. 1:26 dash CV dash 20609 dash, again, case numbers are annoying, KMW. Does that tell me anything? Not offhand, but here's the case. KMW. I'm trying to think if that might stand for something that I would recognize. Let's see. What is this? I'll take a look. The first one is the court listener thing. Okay. It does tell me who it's assigned to. Kathleen Mary Williams. Assigned to Kathleen Mary Williams. Referred to Angelique A. Lett. The citation, of course, being Trump versus Internal Revenue Service. Filed on January 29th. Date terminated May 18th, 2006. It is claimed. All right. Angelique Lett. Let's click on that and get the details there. Does that tell us anything? Let me look them up. Angelique Lett. Her. I'm sorry. Angelique. Angelique, perhaps, because there's an accent on the E at the end, and I don't know why I thought that might be a male's name, but I guess it could be, but it isn't, or it doesn't present itself that way. Angelique, that's H as in AYTCH. That's interesting. They may have decided just for fun to spell out the letter H in its pronunciation as a middle name. Angelique Lett. Sworn in as a United States magistrate judge for the Southern District of Florida in September of 2024. Not necessarily expected to be one directly under Trump's control. I wonder how it got referred to her versus the one it was assigned to, and I'm not certain what the terminology means. And the fact that she's a magistrate judge perhaps indicates that she wasn't going to sit for the trial. If there was one, she might have just been handling pleadings leading up to. And who knows whether they had any plans to try to transfer the case later, or they didn't want to make it obvious right away by filing in Fort Pierce and giving it to Elaine Cannon from the get-go. But anyway, it's part of the interest here. But here's the purported settlement agreement. This is a civil lawsuit brought by President Donald J. Trump, Donald J. Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and the Trump Organization, LLC, against the Internal Revenue Service and the U.S. Department of the Treasury under 26 U.S. Code Section 6103, 26 U.S. Code Section 7431, and 5 U.S. Code Section 552AE10. Won't bother to look them up because no one's using the law anyway. In the interest of resolving the dispute between the parties, they hereby stipulate and agree as follows. And then some recitals in Section 2 here. On January 29th, 2026, plaintiffs filed a complaint in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida stating that a former IRS employee / contractor, and that's kind of important, the status of the person, Charles Littlejohn, had illegally obtained access to and illegally disclosed plaintiffs' tax returns and or tax return information to media outlets in violation of the IRS Code and the Privacy Act. Counsel for plaintiffs have indicated that, but for this settlement, they would intend to amend their complaint, including in order to likely add a putative class claim. I'm not even certain what the class would be, but they're just threatening more action. Note that Charles Littlejohn isn't being sued here. They're, bootstrapping a contractor, since they were hired presumably by the IRS, into the IRS and having the IRS stand in this guy's shoes because he's not worth nearly enough money to pay them off. President Trump has also submitted 2 claims for relief pursuant to the Federal Tax Claims Act based on the unlawful raid on Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida in August of 2022 and the Russia collusion hoax, it says hoax, through his first term as president and beyond. Together, styled the pending agency claims, those claims are currently pending at the administrative level, so they might want to continue with lawsuits there. Not at all the end of the printing the money conveyor belt. Next, by the way, about that contractor thing. I mean, it's entirely possible that you might be able to connect the contractor and the contracting agency such that you can hold the agency liable for the actions of the contractor. But it would be an open question, and you'd have to litigate that first. This thing just assumes that the DOJ just surrenders. Yes, at least this contractor is definitely 100% identifiable as the IRS itself. Ordinarily, you litigate it, and when it's the government, they sometimes tend to win those things. You think that a contractor cheating in this way means the IRS owes you money? If you're not Donald Trump, the answer is no, they don't. This guy owes you money. Good luck getting it out of him, but you're not getting the IRS to pay it. But this one they magically won. So Section C in the recitals here, the conduct alleged in the case and the pending agency claims is representative of the sustained use of the levers of government power by Democrat elected officials, political and career federal employees, contractors, and agents in order to target individuals, groups, and entities for improper and unlawful political, personal, and or ideological reasons, parentheses, quote, lawfare, and, quote, weaponization, close parens. No real definition, just that stuff, that's lawfare and weaponization. Other well-known examples of lawfare and weaponization include the Biden administration's abuse of the FACE Act, F-A-C-E. I forget what that stands for, but we've mentioned it before. The Biden administration's wrongful labeling of certain parents as domestic terrorists. Come on. And the IRS's targeting of groups based on improper ideological criteria. So all of the recitals of the supposed facts of the case to which the DOJ is agreeing, it's a list of conspiracy theorist right-wing grievances stated as though they're fact, and the Department of Justice stipulating that they are, which is against all sorts of standard practice in government lawyering in general. Ordinarily, I mean, I don't know how many times we've been stuck with really annoying and counterproductive stipulations and results from court cases where the DOJ has said, look, institutionally, we are about the protection of the federal government, and very often that means the protection of the chief executive in the federal government. And despite the fact that everybody believes that this or that should be the outcome of this case, the DOJ has to defend it. Like, for instance, I don't know, there's plenty of examples of people having sought recompense from garbage that happened to them illegally and unconstitutionally under the first Trump administration. And if suit is filed during the Biden administration, we found the very frustrating reality that DOJ was in the position of saying, our job is to defend the government position here. As much as we all know that the Trump administration committed horrific abuses against people's rights, we have to be careful to adjudicate all of them properly, because otherwise, if you just surrender them, then you end up with the precedent that it's okay for certain people anyway to just simply file their claims and take money out of the Treasury, and you got to jealously guard the outer boundaries of the rights and prerogatives of the federal government. That's the job of the DOJ. In this case, I mean, all of that goes out the window. You just simply say, I don't know, there's a thing called lawfare. There's a thing called weaponization, and it's defined as whatever we say it is. That guy is mad about it. Here are some examples of it. Biden did it, Biden did it, Biden did it. Even if the thing they're talking about isn't something that actually happened. Well-known examples. And, of course, yeah, so now this also sets the precedent of, and very carefully, sets the precedent that Republicans can make angry claims about what happens during Democratic administrations and get paid, but hey, this thing doesn't really establish that there's any situation under which Democrats targeted by a Republican administration could seek recompense, because this defines it as Democrat governments doing these things. And then gives no examples of them except the ones that I heard that they told parents that you were terrorists. Proof? Anything? No? All right. It's just, there it is. Next of the recitals, to bring the case and pending agency claims to a close, capitals, forever and finally, that's all caps. So, right, it's starting to look like they're having the suit dismissed with prejudice, but it doesn't come to the court to do that, so they're not using those terms. To bring the case, blah, 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 to a close forever and finally, the parties have determined to settle the case and pending agency claims effective May 18th, 2026, that being the effective date. Not clarified to this point is, I could read this as saying the pending agency claims include all claims about the Mar-a-Lago raid and the Russia collusion hoax, etc. Although you recited them in B as being separate, in D you're saying all the pending agency claims. We didn't say all. Well, that's the way I read it. But not Aileen Cannon or Sam Alito. Anyway. Next up is the relief and legal authority. Well, that should be short. Legal authority. As sole and complete relief for allegations in the case of the pending agency claims. Again, that sort of feels like with prejudice. Plaintiff President Donald J. Trump and other named plaintiffs in the case and in the pending agency claims will receive a formal apology from the United States. He has to apologize to himself. That's true, too. But will not receive any monetary payment or damages of any kind. So it's hands off for him. It's all going to charity, which, by the way, be on the lookout, IRS, the other alleged party to this thing, when Donald Trump claims a $1.776 billion tax write-off for donating all of this money to charity. Anyhow, so let's see, some citations to some earlier cases. I guess, I don't know, news reports. Interesting. So I guess for the apology, see Griffin versus IRS and the Wall Street Journal's report. The IRS apologizes to Ken Griffin, June 26, 2024. And then with a URL where you can find it. It says it's available, but it really isn't because it's behind a paywall. It's the Wall Street Journal. Settlement agreement continues down here. What are we in? Relief and legal authority. Section B, in exchange for the relief provided in this settlement agreement and except as provided herein, e.g. the claims process described below, plaintiffs hereby, now all caps, release, waive, acquit, and forever discharge defendants, which is of course himself, and the United States, from and are hereby forever barred and precluded from prosecuting or pursuing any and all claims, charges, counterclaims, causes of action, appeals, or requests for any relief, including injunctive, monetary damages, damages, so I don't know about that. Not monetary damages, but monetary, damages, tax payments, debt relief, costs, attorney's fees, expenses, and or interest that, as of effective date, have been or could have been asserted by plaintiffs in the case or the pending agency claims by reason of, with respect to, in connection with, or which arise out of matters in the case or the pending agency claims. So it's certainly lots of language that they can point to say this is the final end of it. And any normal judge would probably read that and say, yeah, sure, I regard that as having terminated the cause and having precluded any further cause of action that arises out of this. It does say so. But if Trump wanted it not to, and brought his claim to Aileen Cannon, would Aileen Cannon read that and say, that's not what it means? I don't know, because they keep reading things like the Constitution and saying, that's not what it means. Insurrection, we don't know what that might be. Nobody has convicted the guy of insurrection, so it must not be talking about him. Everybody's passing that around. A reminder that the 14th Amendment precludes, where is it? Let's see if we can grab it, what has been passed around. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, the validity of you don't need to know the part about the validity of the public debt. The important part here is, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States. And the question, so is this on the books or no? Is this not part of the 14th Amendment anymore? It's there. And by the way, just a reminder, it's always been there, but always been a question mark in every case. Can you enforce the Constitution in your case? And you got to ask the judges about that. Usually yes, sometimes no. Now it's just always no. But, I'm sure that the claim would be, well, look, the United States, the United States is not paying any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection. Neither is any state doing it. It's a privately administered fund established by agreement between the president, who was a putative plaintiff against the IRS, and the IRS said they were wrong, and here's the money, and they turned over control. At the point at which the funds are transferred to people you think are insurrectionists or rebels, it wasn't money that the United States or any state actually controlled. It's a pretty obvious and direct pipeline, but sorry, it was private relief that two private parties agreed to, not the United States, even though, since there was no adversarial relationship in the initial suit, it is the United States paying that money, and everybody knows it. And it would be a 90% issue to claim as much as well. Anyway, on with the settlement, I guess. I don't know. This is somewhat interesting to comb through this. Lastly, to provide a systematic process to hear and redress claims of others who, like plaintiffs, state that they incurred harm from similar lawfare and weaponization, the Attorney General of the United States — there is no Attorney General of the United States, we have an acting one, but not a real one — agrees to create, quote, the Anti-Weaponization Fund, subject to the terms and limitations described herein. So now we get into the process by which they're going to distribute the money and claim that it isn't the United States or any state giving this money out, even if there is a 14th Amendment. And, it says the Attorney General will do it, and we don't have one. So I don't know, man. Is that a fatal paperwork error? Probably not. Someone is standing in the shoes of the Attorney General. That should be enough. Composition and operation of the Anti-Weaponization Fund. An accompanying order of the Attorney General, of which there is none, issued within 30 days of the effective date. So clock's starting to get Todd Blanche installed as the Attorney General in order to make this paperwork correct. Shall establish funding and any other relevant requirements, rules, conditions, terms, and waivers, which shall be treated as incorporated herein. The Attorney General may also change the formal name of the Anti-Weaponization Fund by order. The corpus of the Anti-Weaponization Fund's funding does not represent the value of any current claim by plaintiffs, but rather is based on the projected valuation of future claimants' claims, and accordingly the corpus of the Anti-Weaponization Fund funding is not taxable income as to plaintiffs who receive no economic benefit from this settlement. That'll be interesting. I guess that ordinarily should preclude him from claiming a tax write-off from giving the money away, but maybe it won't. I don't know, because the whole thing doesn't really work. But okay, that's an interesting, hands-off type claim there. And by the way, isn't that amazing? The projected valuation of future claimants' claims, they figured out, came to exactly $1776 million. I'm sure. That's so scientific. I'd like to see the calculations on that one, but we won't. We're just meant to accept. In fact, the IRS is simply meant to accept that that's the totally scientific calculation of the future claims in their view against the fund. Next up, the anti-weaponization fund shall consist of 5 members. Within 30 days of the effective date, the Attorney General shall issue an order appointing the members, including the chair of the anti-weaponization fund, with such order being treated as incorporated herein. I guess there's still every chance that that chair will be Donald Trump himself. One of the members shall be chosen in consultation with congressional leadership. The members shall serve until the anti-weaponization fund is concluded as described below, unless they resign or are removed by the president, who can remove any member without cause. Any replacement shall be made by the same method as the initial appointment. A quorum is 3 members. A majority of a quorum is authorized to take action. Oh, look at that. So a quorum is 3 members. A majority of a quorum authorized to take action. So I guess as few as 2 members could dispense funds. They're a majority of a quorum. But I mean, shouldn't it? Well, I guess that's normal. But anyway, consistent with this settlement agreement, the anti-weaponization fund shall have the power to determine its own procedures for submitting, receiving, processing, and granting or denying claims. Some citations to the Deepwater Horizon Settlement Fund as precedent for that. The anti-weaponization fund may make those procedures public in whole or in part at its discretion. D, the anti-weaponization fund shall have the power to issue formal apologies, issue monetary relief owed to claimants as a result of their legal rights, grant claims in whole or in part, deny claims in whole or in part, defer review of claims, and receive and request evidence or other support for claims, including requesting information from or consulting with federal agencies. E, on a quarterly basis or otherwise as directed by the Attorney General, the Anti-Weaponization Fund shall provide to the Attorney General, there isn't one, a confidential written report that includes the name and address of each claimant who has received any relief, and if so, the nature of such relief. So the Attorney General gets the list, nobody else does. The Department of Justice, Section F here, or a third-party contractor of the agency as designated by the Attorney General, may audit the claims submitted pursuant to this agreement. The Department of Justice and or any other government agency may, to the full extent permitted by law, make referrals for investigation or prosecution or prosecute or take other enforcement actions to address any evidence of fraud, or not, obviously. Section G, the Anti-Weaponization Fund shall cease processing claims no later than December 1st, 2028. Okay. No other administration can control this thing. H, in the event that there is a balance remaining in the Anti-Weaponization Fund's account after December 15th, 2028, the fund shall transfer such balance before January 1st, 2029, before the next president, to the Department of Commerce, Interior, or other appropriate federal government account as designated by the President, with some citation to some code, which may or may not have anything to do with that. Section I, the recipient of any relief from the Anti-Weaponization Fund will have the sole responsibility to comply with their own applicable federal, state, and local tax requirements that arise as a result of this settlement agreement, and any relief from the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Good suggestion made by the rude pundit. If I'm a state legislator, if you have any income from this fund, the tax rate is 100%. I'm changing that. I'm using Trump math. The tax on any disbursements from this fund is 1,776%. Please keep it patriotic. Why do you hate America? Changing it down to 100%. And by the way, it's not even Trump math necessarily. You, of course, can't discount something by 1,776%, but you can increase things by 1,776%. It will work. That's patriotic. It is a 1,776% tax that you owe on any money you get from this fund. I don't care where you get the rest of the money from, but you owe it to us. Section 5, limitations on claims, subsection A, submission of a claim to the fund is, I'll just shorten it, is voluntary. Claimants can include entities in case the Heritage Foundation feels like they've been wronged, or the Ku Klux Klan for that matter, or the Oath Keepers. And a claimant can choose whether to accept relief from the anti-weaponization fund, so they don't have to take it if they find that there's a 1,776% tax on it. If a claimant does so, the claimant must forego all other relief, including judicial relief, whether previously asserted or not. C, to be eligible for relief, a claimant must assert at least one legal claim stating that the claimant was a victim of lawfare and or weaponization, whatever those may be. D, in evaluating claims, the fund shall consider the totality of the circumstances, including A, the strength of the claim and supporting evidence and how much money you've given to Trump super PACs. B, the claimant's actions, whether or not you smeared feces on the wall of the Capitol. You get more for feces smearing, I guess. C, the claimant's actual damages incurred as a result of the lawfare and weaponization. Duh. D, reasonable attorney's fees paid by the claimant as a result of the lawfare and weaponization. E, any time the claimant spent in prison or otherwise in federal prison or custody as a result of the lawfare and weaponization. You get more money the more time you spent in the federal clink. F, whether and to what extent the claimant has already obtained any form of relief for the lawfare and weaponization from any source. And G, other factors the fund deems just and appropriate. Now, Section E, a claimant who already has a claim pending in court or administrative proceedings may be eligible for relief, subject to Section 5, subparagraph B. F, the anti-weaponization fund shall take reasonable steps. Oh, those are the best kind. Reasonable ones to protect private, personal, and financial information submitted to them under the settlement agreement. And G, the anti-weaponization fund shall impose controls and systems to avoid fraudulent claims. So there you go. Enforcement is next, but of course we're running out of time. Let's see what we can get out of it. A, this settlement is enforceable and challengeable solely by plaintiffs, defendants, and the United States. So that's good news. I guess the next president of the United States can challenge it, if we ever have one. B, because the claim process is voluntary, there shall be no appeal, arbitration, or judicial review of claims, offers, or other determinations made by the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Denial of the Anti-Weaponization Fund, dependency of a claim, or the rejection of an offer by a claimant does not preclude a claimant from seeking judicial or other relief outside the Anti-Weaponization Fund process, if otherwise allowed by law. So when they strike this thing down as illegal, unconstitutional, can you still sue? Yes. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. You know, we're actually making pretty fast progress through this thing, believe it or not. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to go all the way to the end, but some of these tidbits are kind of interesting just to anticipate either ways that this thing could be tripped up yet or the ways that they've tried to avoid any scrutiny. And just, so sort of saying, well, if it all turns out to be illegal and unconstitutional, well, you can just sue the regular way. And since we intend to hold power in the United States forever, we'll just arrange for you to win your cases later on. So next up in Section 7 here is integration and counterparts. This settlement agreement, including the accompanying orders by the Attorney General, of which there is none, constitutes the entire agreement of the parties, and no prior statement, representation, agreement, or understanding, oral or written, that is not contained herein will have any force or effect. This settlement agreement may be executed in counterparts. All executed counterparts, and each of them shall be deemed to be one and the same instrument. So, if we do find mistakes, we'll just correct them later. Section 8, modification. The settlement agreement may be modified only with the written agreement of the parties, and they are, of course, one and the same, so you will get that written agreement. Section 9, duties consistent with law and regulation, as though any of them were. Nothing contained in a settlement agreement shall impose on defendants or their agents, employees, or contractors any duty, obligation, or requirement, the performance of which would be inconsistent with federal statutes. So it's totally lawful. It says so right here. The parties to this settlement agreement shall defend against any challenges to it in any forum. So if anybody has any problem with this thing, the DOJ will pay the tab to defend it. Section 10, severability. Should any provision of the settlement agreement be found by a court to be invalid or unenforceable, like maybe all of it, then the validity of the other provisions of this settlement shall not be affected or impaired, as such provisions shall be enforced to the maximum extent possible, including by modification by mutual agreement, if appropriate. It's never appropriate, of course. Then yes, they would modify it by mutual agreement, but severability clause, fairly standard stuff there. The one standard thing they're doing in the whole bit. Section 11, dismissal of the case and withdrawal of pending agency claims. I guess this is the important part for my initial question. Plaintiffs agree to file a dismissal with prejudice of the case under Rule 41A1A1, believe it or not, with all, of course, being, so let's say, Rule 41, lowercase a, Arabic numeral 1, capital A, lowercase Roman numeral 1, in case you're trying to figure this out, 41A1A1, on or before May 18th, 2026. So what's today? May 19th. So they will already allegedly have filed a dismissal with prejudice. I haven't seen it. I haven't gone looking for it yet, but I'm kind of wondering, are we going to see that? And by the way, the terms of the agreement that we just read, like let's say plaintiff Donald J. Trump et al., President Donald J. Trump et al., his sons, the Trump organization, etc. What if they haven't filed their dismissal with prejudice under Rule 41A1A1 or any other rule for that matter? Who cares? They could just modify it and say, oops, well, we forgot to file it. We did file it on May 19th. It says we were going to do it by May 18th. Gee, parties, can we get agreement to modify it so that it's now reads May 19th? Yes, we can. Okay, problem solved. Or maybe they just don't file it at all, and the IRS/DOJ/Attorney General just says, well, I don't know, we're not moved to take notice of that. And then later they file the claim again, and you say, well, this says it's the complete and total and final, yada, yada. Yes, but it also says that will be, that we'll file a dismissal with prejudice. And we didn't do that. But you were supposed to. Yeah, but well, I guess you could sue us under that if you want, but you're going to lose, and we'll just modify the agreement. This is how we don't have to do that. So there is a loophole that's usable. Will they, in fact, or maybe have they, in fact, filed the dismissal with prejudice? There's no reason really to believe that normal people would not have done that. I mean, this kind of protects their claim regardless, so go ahead and do it. And since they can invent any claim they want and be parties on both sides, they can just print the money elsewhere. There's really no reason to extend this claim, but show me the paperwork, I guess, so that I know whether their denial of it later is going to be ridiculous or merely an oversight or what. All right. I guess we can go and look and see whether that's going to happen. The parties further agree that by June 15th, they will withdraw, terminate, and no longer pursue any setting or forum, the pending agency claims. Okay, then a bunch of signatures. Here's one for the plaintiff. Daniel Z. Epstein, DC barcode number 1009132, dated yesterday. He's from Epstein and Company, LLC, 8903 Glades Road, Suite 8A8, number 2090, Boca Raton, Florida, zip code 33434. His email is in there if you have any questions for him, dan@epsteinco.co, believe it or not .com, but .co. That may or may not be right. It's signed by him, but also apparently covers Alejandro Brito, Florida Bar 098442, Brito PLLC, 2121 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, Suite 650, Coral Gables, Florida, 33134. And all of his contact information as well if you wanted to. abrito@britopllc.com. So go ahead. There's a secondary contact for him. A Piriou. It's APIRIOU. Maybe it's an assistant at britopllc.com. Good luck to everyone. Those being the counsels to plaintiff President Donald J. Trump et al. So there you have it. For the United States, it's signed by the even more deeply disgraced than ever Stanley E. Woodward, Jr., Associate Attorney General now. He used to just be the plaintiff's attorney for lots of the January 6th defendants, et cetera, now Associate Attorney General, U.S. Department of Justice. So that's signed and dated. Todd Blanche doesn't put his name on it. That's fine. And then here, also agreed for the Internal Revenue Service by Frank Bisignano, Chief Executive Officer of the Internal Revenue Service. The end. How do you like that? You probably don't. But now you know all about it, and we've read all the way through it, and that is somehow important, I'm sure. So there we go. Other news about that, Paul Waldman, not related, as you know, pointing out this story that other people have brought up. If Democrats, he says, had the political instincts and media machine Republicans do, in 48 hours, 95% of Americans would know the name of Andrew Paul Johnson. Do you know him? And when you do, you'll be livid that the government is getting ready to give him some of your tax money. This in reference to the post by Amanda Moore, who's Amanda Moore? I don't know. And I won't find out from looking at the bio and on Blue Sky either, but you probably know her very well. She's got a tremendous number of followers. She must be she's clearly a writer. And I guess journalist, but Amanda Moore pointing out in November, I broke this story about Andrew Paul Johnson. He's a pardoned January 6ther who molested children and used the promise of reparations to bribe his victims' silence. We did hear this story, and I think we read it, and we must have read Amanda Moore's story about it, probably, or else it was a knockoff. But yes, a pardoned January 6ther who then went on to molest children post-pardon. And I think probably among those who thinks that they might be able to successfully argue that they were pardoned of the child molestation as well. But interesting. It will be worth checking into whether or not he had any sort of weird foreknowledge, because he attempted, as Amanda points out, to bribe his victim and his victim's family into silence about his having molested their children by saying, look, President Trump is going to pay me millions in reparations for my unjust treatment post-January 6th, and I'll give you a piece of that if you'll just be quiet about my molesting your children. Andrew Paul Johnson was arraigned in Florida court in October on multiple charges, including molesting a child as young as 11 years old. Johnson dangled the prospect that one of the children could receive money because he was entitled to $10 million as part of reparations for his January 6th arrest. That could just be crazy ass making it up, but we are now here, and crazy ass child molester making it up has become United States federal government policy. There's going to be a fund. Will he get $10 million? I don't know, but the amount of money that they're talking about, by the way, is about enough to give about $1 million apiece to every one of the 1,600 pardoned January 6thers. So maybe, or as they said in the settlement, the so-called settlement agreement, depending on how much time you spent in jail or various other claims you may make and how we feel about those claims, we could give you more or less money. Is he getting $10 million? I guess I doubt it. And is there any connection between his claims to his victims and this fund? I don't know. I mean, they've thought for a long time, a lot of them have thought that they were going to get some compensation, and Trump has more or less said that they would do it. It isn't until May 18th, 2026 that we found out exactly what form it would take. Could that be foreknowledge? Could you prove in court? Are there courts anymore? Could you prove in court that it was foreknowledge? Probably not. Would it stop it from happening? Wouldn't stop it from happening. He could get the money. He just would, it's like, well, I got caught and I got put in jail. You didn't stay silent, so you're not getting any money. I'm keeping all of it. Will they give him 10, 1? How many millions of dollars? Don't know. Are child molesters getting essentially federal cash that Donald Trump has diverted from the Treasury Department? Yes. Does that make him an accessory to that child molestation? Why don't we say yes? I don't know that we can prove it. I'm positive that you could not establish it to, the necessary degree in court. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't charge him as an accessory to that and find out later whether the claim is strong enough. In the meantime, does that mean you should be saying Donald Trump is accessory to child molestation? Sure it does. Go right ahead. I would if I were you. I'm me, and I just did. But if anybody asks, I'm you. Let them sue you about it, not me. I don't know. I really don't know what else to tell you about this. Look, and here's mention of it from Aaron Rupar as Chris Van Hollen asks the question of Todd Blanche. Van Hollen asking, I guess I better put this one. Oh, I went to put it aside, but somebody else said something on Blue Sky, and now it's all, I got to scroll. All right, here we go. Thank you to Heather Cox Richardson for re-injecting this into the timeline so I could grab it. Thank you, Aaron Rupar, for what you do. Chris Van Hollen asks Todd Blanche. An individual who was pardoned by Trump went on to molest 2 children, and he tried to buy their silence by saying he would give them funds from your slush fund. Can you commit to not making that person eligible for a payout? Blanche basically say, I guess this is Aaron Rupar's summary of it. You're obviously lying. Van Hollen saying, I'm reporting what he said. I guess we really got to play this and find out what's going on here. It's a minute. We'll just do it in the quick and dirty fashion of turning up the volume on the laptop and get to it.
To this slush fund.
This is Van Hollen.
Because there's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question because there's no way that this person committed to that. But the slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure,
but I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting what he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been
you said from the slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
He's absolutely right, of course, that they've been telegraphing it for a long time. And I see what Blanche is trying to do. And it's so interesting to also watch him. Don't ever do what again? And Van Hollen doesn't answer him. Don't ever tell me that I'm obviously lying when I'm obviously not. But I see what he's saying. You must be lying about his saying that the payout was going to come from this slush fund because this slush fund didn't exist until just now. But yes, Van Hollen is right that it was telegraphed. But even so, like setting it all aside, and maybe they got to this later, Van Hollen obviously, look, I'll put it to you this way. Whether or not this guy knew that there really was going to be a compensation fund is beside the point. It exists now. And the rules don't do anything to preclude this guy from getting a payout. But the rules are up to you guys. You can make the rules be whatever you want. You have total and complete control over the validity of the claims or the judgment of the validity of any claims made. And it's entirely up to you and this board, apparently, as to who gets money. Can you, therefore, commit to this? Will you at least say, I will use my powers for good rather than evil, and say, the child molester won't get any money? It's not a matter of fairness. It's not a matter of, well, my hands were tied or anything. There's no tying of hands. It says in the agreement that you have total and complete control over who gets what. Of course, it also says you can keep it secret. So, yes, you'll be giving money to the child molester and just not telling anybody. But then we'll have you on the record as being a jackass and a liar. Not that will do anything. But, essentially it's just a political play here. Will you commit to not paying child molesters? No, he won't. You're lying. No, that's not really an answer. But supposing I was. This thing really happened. That guy really said it. He's really a January 6th. This fund is aimed at them. And you really do have total, complete discretion over who gets paid what from this fund. So I'm asking you, how will you use that discretion? To pay child molesters or not to pay them? And That's really the question we're getting at. There will be no answer, and then when the guy gets the money, it'll be secret. So, yes, you should be mad about that. There you are. Okay. Well, I'll be discussing that a little bit more on Blue Sky, I'm sure, after the fact. Now, other things to get to your the rest of your news. I guess we do operate today under the cloud of a, thankfully, not mass shooting, but an egregious shooting nonetheless. In San Diego, a mosque was attacked by what appears to be a pair of teenage kids, I think, which is sad all by itself. The fact that, teenagers could get to the point where they are so warped that they would commit these kinds of, school shootings have been perpetrated by warped teenagers the whole time. So, anyway. A San Diego mosque was attacked. 2 shooters. There was an armed security guard there who met and resisted, and I think as between the 3 of them, they're all dead. And that's kind of it. And amazingly, Mark Wayne Mullen, Secretary of Homeland Security, apparently made a television appearance yesterday in which he said, if congregations, if religious communities are worried about attacks, terrorist-style attacks like this, they should hire private security. This, by the way, the Secretary of Homeland Security. So, quite rightly, it was put to him, Office, what's the name of that movie again? Office, I've forgotten already. How can I possibly have forgotten it? I don't know. I'm blanking now. But I'll get it for you. Someone will remember before I do. Office. It's a film that's old enough that lots of you could maybe not have seen. Office Space. That's it. 1999, in which the consultants are asking everybody, so what exactly is it you would say you do here? Secretary of Homeland Security. Secretary of Homeland Security. How are you going to help us with Homeland Security? The answer is you should go out and get your own security, because you're only living here in the homeland. That doesn't entitle you to any security. Homeland Security is about securing my house, because I'm a government official. Your house of worship needs to be secured by you privately. P.S., by the way, previous administrations, I guess including the first Trump administration, there were grants for this kind of thing, not entirely covering all the costs, but it's certainly been my experience that there were grants that would help, and they have done everything they can to reduce the grant pool for that kind of funding. But, it's just kind of bizarre to watch the Homeland Security Department say, I don't know, I guess you guys should go get some security. Thanks a heap. Anyway, it's a weird situation, the whole thing, of course. And to see the Department of Homeland Security Secretary saying something like that, and, they did have security. And, of course, in a weird way, I guess you could say it was, other people were saying, you're calling this a success? It's hard to call it a success. But on the other hand, 2 shooters came to shoot up a mosque, and they didn't kill anybody in the mosque because the security guard stopped them. But the security guard was killed in the process. That's not so successful, certainly. No one feels like a success there, but that's what the guard was there to do, and he did it. And by the way, you'll find all over social media, hopefully legitimately, GoFundMe type fundraisers for the family, the surviving family of that security guard. I can't point you to them directly at this point, but they weren't hard to find. But it will be hard to verify that they're actually going to the right place. I don't know. So apparently the shooter, like we said, teenagers, left behind a suicide note, and I'm sure it's horrific, and it's probably not a good idea for us to name the shooters at this point, but I'll pull an article anyway so that there's something on record for our use in our summary. I guess. I can't linger too long on that one, except I feel duty bound to note, of course, that it did occur, and it's a disaster once again. And it's just an interesting situation because it looks like it was perhaps, right-wing white supremacy behind the attack, but honestly, I can't tell you much more than that, or whether that theory really held up in the subsequent reporting, although, not to say that the 17-year-old shooter would have fully formed thoughts on anything in particular, but that's what it begins to look like. And Jewish schools and organizations in the area also went on lockdown yesterday, wisely, because, one, who knows what the hell's going on ever, and when you hear about a shooting, lockdown is probably a wise move regardless. But if it's right-wing white supremacists, there's really no reason to believe that they wouldn't then have driven on to a Jewish house of worship or school and decided to shoot that up on the same basis. I guess I was going to say the same reason, but reason is just the wrong word to use generally. Let's see. Anyway, lots of hearings going. I guess hearings still ongoing with Todd Blanche about the slush fund. Empty Wheel is watching it. Definitely a topic of great interest today. All right. Let's see. Other things to talk about. This is somewhat related, I guess, to slush funds or slush fundery, if that's a word that we can invent, a term we can coin, and why. Not much relationship to what's going on right here, right now. The podcast and broadcast you're listening to, you'll see what I'm talking about. The New York Times has an interesting story. Political money is flowing to influencers. That leaves us out. But from whom? That is a good question. And there's a little bit of both sidesism that gets worked into this, of course, because you can't just accuse Republicans of doing it, even though, for the most part, that's exactly what Republicans are doing, and very little about what Democrats are doing. But they found one, and guess who gets the lead? The Democrats. Social media stars have become a magnet for campaigns and political groups. Damn it, when's that Magnets, how do they work, I might ask? But they've been a magnet for campaigns and political groups that want to push priorities without disclosing where their money is going. It is it just today that it came out? No, it's May 16th piece by Ken Bensinger. Let's tell you what you already know, but starting with the one you didn't know about because it's the Democrat that they lead with. Last month, Carlos Eduardo Espina, a progressive influencer. Any of you influenced by him? I don't know him, but that's because he's a TikToker. Revealed in a surprising endorsement to his 14.5 million followers. Can I get 1 million? One follower, for that matter. 14.5 million followers on TikTok. He would support Tom Steyer. Is that the way he says his name? After all these years, I should have checked this. The billionaire running for California governor as a Democrat. I really believe Tom Steyer is different, Mr. Espina said in a speech that he posted on social media. He could be traveling around the world or doing whatever he wants, but he wants to serve the people of this state, which is, of course, pointing out that was the Donald Trump pitch. But I don't know how old this kid is. Doesn't look that old, but not that young either. I don't know. Okay, I'm sure he is different. I mean, one of the differences is he's paying a Democrat for doing something. Another, of course, is that he's paying the guy who's saying this. Unmentioned in Mr. Espina's post, Mr. Steyer's campaign was paying him $100,000 to help win the election. A few days earlier, Mr. Espina, who lives in Texas, it's problematic too, had noted in a video that the campaign hired him to consult on issues related to Latinos, which are the primary focus of Mr. Espina's social media posts. But none of his several dozen subsequent posts on TikTok, Instagram, or Threads promoting Mr. Steyer noted the financial arrangement. Problematic. The $100,000 fee, buried in campaign finance records, is described as a payment for, quote, strategic advice and campaign surrogacy. The money went to a limited liability company in Texas that Mr. Espina also used to receive a travel reimbursement from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 2024. Mr. Mr. Espina's arrangement provides a rare glimpse into the world of pay-for-play social media, or even rarer because it involves Democrats, where content creators and marketing firms are increasingly compensated to promote candidates or points of view. Oh, I got to get ready for the music here, and I'm late. Dang. I think only by a second we can manage that. But yes, they are increasingly compensated to promote candidates or points of view. And where there are few requirements for disclosure, the paid advocacy exists outside the realm of traditional lobbying and campaigning, reaching younger, more online audiences, unlikely to be swayed by television advertisements or glossy mailers. So it's not without basis, the strategy. It's just being executed in a weird way. And guess what? Republicans are actually doing it more.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen versus Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. I told you just before the break that Republicans do this too. It is kind of fascinating that a story like this leads with a Democrat. They were going to both sides it, obviously. And it's true that, it happens on both sides. But, then, of course, the obvious question, well, if it happens 999 times on the Republican side and twice on the Democratic side, does that count as both sides? It's not untrue. So I guess it's good. But then, of course, the editorial decision to say, well, let's not lead with the Republicans doing this because that will make Republicans mad. Whereas if we lead with Democrats doing it, that will make Democrats mad. But who cares about that? That is an issue. You all know about it. And when we finally do get to the Republicans doing it, it's like, you might have talked about them first, and you might have talked, from what I understand it, more about what at least this one Republican example that I know is coming because I've seen it previewed on social media, the kind of person we're talking about. Like, for all they had to say about what was weird or shady about Espina's acceptance of a consulting contract and the questionable level of disclosure, I guess, is the best you can do with this, because he did say he had it. And he didn't hide it entirely, but he wasn't exactly forthcoming about it either, necessarily. It's embarrassing. I can see why you wouldn't want to be terribly forthcoming about it, but you probably shouldn't do it, which is why I have no money, I guess. Not that anybody has yet offered to bribe me for this, but I'm open to considering it, so please give me a chance. Anyway, there's more, because Republicans actually did it. Where did we get to here? Yes, Democratic and Republican groups, there were ones that were Republican, have spent millions on this type of communication over each of the past few campaign cycles, according to consultants and campaign officials from both parties. Both parties! Yet little is known about many of the payments. The Federal Election Commission, the agency that monitors political spending, says its rules governing disclosure for traditional political advertising does not apply to social media. So I could already be hiding millions from you. And the Federal Trade Commission, which regulates deceptive business practices, requires influencers to disclose payments for promoting commercial products and services, but it says it doesn't regulate political advertisements. As a result, paid influence has become a magnet for campaigns, not strong enough for me, but a magnet for campaigns and groups that want to push political priorities without disclosing where their money is going or revealing that some of their supporters are being paid. You can't see where the money is coming from, and you can't see where it's going, like the slush fund, said Brendan Fisher of the Campaign Legal Center, a nonprofit watchdog group. In October, his organization petitioned the FEC to require disclaimers on paid political content created by influencers. The agency has not taken action on that request. In 2024, California enacted a law that requires influencers who are compensated for political messaging to include a disclaimer noting that they were paid and sets penalties for campaigns for violations. Texas also adopted disclosure requirements that year. I don't know if they're good ones, but that's embarrassing that the rest of the country is being beaten by Texas. On Wednesday, 2 social media influencers who support another candidate for governor, Javier Becerra, filed a complaint with the California Fair Political Practices Commission, which enforces the state's campaign finance laws. They accused the Steyer campaign of paying, quote, perhaps dozens of third-party influencers to publish content supporting, unquote, the candidate without proper disclaimers. In a statement, Kevin Liao, maybe Liao, a spokesman for the Steyer campaign, called the accusations, quote, baseless. The campaign believes in compensating people for their time and work product, and so not baseless, and paid creators to generate content, Mr. Liao said, adding that it properly notified influencers of their disclosure requirements and that the onus was on them. So it's not baseless at all. It sounds like they described it correctly and whatever. But I guess that's a thing you say when you're trying to make people think there's nothing there. After the complaint was filed, the campaign added language to a job listing offering influencers $1,000 per month. I've never seen one of these. $1,000 per month to create pro-Steyer content. Just as a test, go Steyer. And if you want, like my mailing address or bank number or whatever to make a deposit, you can email me at kagrox@gmail.com. Let's see how that works. I don't know. I don't know that I'd really be. I'll tell you later whether or not I'm really supporting them. How about that? I'm bribable. Just send me the money and we'll see where it goes. Anyway, I don't vote there. Neither does Espina, but he got money. So where's mine? I'm asking for it. Creators have obligations to include disclaimers in media they produce under this offer, the new language states. Right now, I don't owe anybody a disclaimer. I haven't been paid. If I get paid off of that, I'll tell you that, and then I'll say asterisk on Go Steyer, and you'll know what happened. On Wednesday evening, Mr. Espina appeared with Mr. Steyer at a campaign event in a Los Angeles suburb, which is not where he lives. As the crowd ate free tacos and churros, and that's good, Mr. Espina acknowledged in an interview, that's good too, that the campaign had paid him, but said he did not think he needed to put a disclaimer on any of his posts because he wasn't being paid to post. Instead, he said he was hired as a consultant with expertise on Latino issues. And I see what he's getting at. That's a decent hair to split. But, now that you know that everybody knows and that's what they're getting at, you could just say, yeah. But people see me as a content creator and they think all I do is content, said Mr. Espina, wearing a royal blue Steyer campaign shirt and taking selfies with throngs of enthusiastic fans. What I do is more of the advising side of things. Yeah, I could advise you, too. I don't have to create content. Anyway, in the past year, journalists have uncovered numerous payments to influencers to shape public opinion or lobby government officials, including efforts to protect sugary sodas from regulation. I like sugary sodas. $1,000, please. Block proposed state and federal AI legislation. I haven't done that. Promote Israeli interests. Some people would probably accuse me of having done that, but I don't think that's what we're doing here. Promote Israeli interests to American audiences. And last month, undermine a congressional candidate before a primary. I love undermining congressional candidates before a primary. If I could have done it, I would have. Some of the payments to influencers, and in particular to marketing firms that specialize in political social media, are disclosed in public records. One of those firms, Creator Grid, I guess I should look them up, and maybe if I start emailing them, they'll send me money. Creator Grid has received almost $875,000 from the Republican, it won't work for me. The Republican National Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee since late 2023, including a payment of $35,840 in February, which of course pales by comparison, I guess, to the $100,000 that went to this one guy. This is $35,000 went to who knows how many. They really still haven't said anything about, the Republican equivalent here. I don't know how many paragraphs into this piece. On its website, Creator Grid said it, quote, connects Republican candidates with the Internet's most powerful conservative influencers. And we got stories about some of them, too. Just not in this. But other political social media agencies scarcely appear in FEC records. In part, that's because much of the money to the creators originates with or from nonprofit advocacy organizations that are not required to report their spending, rather than from campaigns or political action committees. Occasionally, influencers disclose payments on their own. Last summer, Dominic McGee, a right-wing influencer known as Dom Luker, I think I've heard that guy, criticized former President Barack Obama on Twitter for opposing the sweeping bill to extend tax cuts and slash social safety net programs that Congress voted on last year. I guess that's the Too Big Beautiful Bidets bill. Beginning with the phrase breaking, and published just hours before the House voted on President Trump's bill, the post was viewed 1.3 million times. In January, Mr. McGee launched a website that revealed he had been paid for the post, one of 11 he spotlighted as, quote, successful ad examples. He also included a price list stating that he charges $15,000 for posts beginning with the word breaking or developing. Me too, by the way. The site does not disclose who paid him for the post about the bill. Mr. McGee did not respond to a request for comment. He has lately started tagging some of his posts with a label that reads paid partnership, a feature that Twitter recently introduced to increase transparency. In March, Jessica Reed Krause, and I think this is the person I had in mind that people were complaining about in the previews of this article. Finally, Jessica Reed Krause, an influencer with a large and passionate following, included a version of that same phrase, hashtag paid partnership, when she amplified a post on Twitter by Senator Tom Sheehy, a Montana Republican. The lawmaker had critiqued a New York Times journalist. This is the New York Times we're reading, of course, who reached out to him with questions before publishing an article about billionaires donating to political campaigns, including to Mr. Sheehy's. Ms. Krause's post was one of dozens from popular pro-Trump accounts that criticized the reporter and the Times, but hers was the only one to include the disclaimer. So that lands you in the middle of the story, I guess. Within hours, Ms. Krause deleted the post. Interesting. In an interview, she said she had received a text message urging her to take it down. She said that her post had been part of an organized campaign offering influencers money in exchange for amplification of the senator's original post, and that she had been trying to be transparent by noting she had been compensated. I didn't do anything wrong here, Ms. Krause said, who declined to say who had paid her for the post. It's wrong not to say that, I guess. In a subsequent conversation, she said she could not remember who had originally approached her. I mean, maybe she's addled, who knows, and who had texted her asking her to take the post down or how much she had been paid. None of it is remembered. Anything I'm getting paid for, I don't want people to think I wasn't. I'm just not going to tell you whether I was or how much or who did it. A spokesman for Mr. Sheehy said neither the senator nor his campaign had paid for the posts. Ms. Krause, who is known for her commentary on wellness and celebrities, as well as her support for Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is slowly dying of colloidal silver poisoning, has 1.2 million followers on Instagram, 441,000 subscribers on Substack, and more than 66,000 followers on Twitter. She said she often worked with social media marketing firms and received multiple offers to make paid content every week. You get talking points you can seamlessly weave into your own content, Ms. Krause said. So she's an old hand at this. But she's the second mention. The first mention has now come back. Mr. Espina, in a video posted in mid-April, said Mr. Steyer's campaign had contacted him a week earlier and offered him the opportunity to work with the campaign to be, quote, a bridge between our community and the candidate, I guess the Latino community. Many of Mr. Espina's followers, though, have questioned his motives, because Democrats do question those things. why, they wondered, in hundreds of comments responding to his post supporting Mr. Steyer, would Mr. Ospina be taking such a strong and sudden interest in a California race he had scarcely mentioned previously, and why wasn't he supporting Mr. Becerra, a Democrat in the race who, unlike Mr. Steyer, is Latino? That is a question. I have my reasons for believing that Steyer would be a better option. Mr. Ospina said, okay, in another video, but he added that as Democrats, we shouldn't be focused on attacking each other, and instead should be unified in ensuring Republicans didn't win. Carlos, one commenter responded, don't gaslight us. That's the end of the story. I guess what's not mentioned and what originally caught my eye here, and I don't know if I tagged it or reposted it or whatever it is that we're calling it or not. I don't think so, but I'll have to find it. And I think maybe I'm going to say Lindsay Beyerstein had noted this thing, was that what's her name here in this story? Let me see if I can find the post I was talking about. Lindsay Beyerstein is a pretty prolific poster, so I might have to scroll a little bit. But she remembered a little something about this Republican influencer who they finally get around to acknowledging is actually part of the story here. They say she's, mostly known for celebrity coverage, celebrity content, and it matters in this that's the case, and what kind of celebrity content it was. And perhaps I'm wrong about it having been Lindsay, because I'm not seeing. Oh, there we go. There it is. Jessica Reed Krause. So let's see. Here is Kat Tenbarge, independent journalist covering tech, culture, and politics by the bio, saying, hey, the woman in the photo here, the one in the ad or in the piece from the New York Times, is Jessica Reed Krause. They do identify her, of course. And she built a massive Substack audience off smearing Amber Heard. And now, that's the woman that was involved with, is that the Johnny Depp lawsuit situation? So smearing Amber Heard, and now does paid propaganda for Republicans. Who would have guessed? She also helped RFK Jr. reach millions of moms, but the Amber Heard story was overlooked at the Times, or actually, it says overlooked at the time, and it probably was because, that was celebrity gossip garbage, and even though there was a substantive story behind it, the fact that influencers were talking about this trial, almost like, who cares? But it was also overlooked by the Times, capital T, and with an S on the end, because that got zero mention in their story, and that's kind of relevant in my view. Lindsay commenting there that Krause is also championing the innocence of Nicholas Tartaglione, a crooked cop and quadruple murderer, but who was Epstein's cellmate for his first suicide attempt. I find that kind of interesting as well. Does Lindsay have more on that? Yes. Tartaglione is innocent of trying to kill Jeffrey Epstein. Don't get the wrong idea. But nobody ever charged him with that because there was no evidence he attacked the pedophile, except Epstein briefly saying so to beat a disciplinary write-up for self-harm, and then recanting and asking to be housed with Tartaglione again. Tartaglione is not innocent of murdering 4 people, though, 3 of whom were the hapless friends of one guy who supposedly owed him money for a drug deal. So, anyway, just interesting, and I think a quantum difference, probably. I don't know anything more about Ospina's background, but it seems like a quantum difference between the Democratic guy who did it and who got the first 19 paragraphs in the story, and the Republican woman who did it, and also has a kind of long and scummy history of that sort of undermining and smearing in exchange for cash. And maybe you could mention that, and maybe people would be able to, get some serious idea as to whether or not it really is a both sides thing, and if so, is there a difference between the way they operate or not? But you will be able to make that judgment because you heard more background. But hapless New York Times readers who are idiots and don't want any information, apparently, are going to be on their own on that one. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I mentioned that there was more news about political influencers and the amount of money flowing to them, and there is one, and maybe we'll make that a longish form read just to add context to the whole thing, I guess, even though there's still yet more news, but there's still more days to cover all that news. Inside Ben Shapiro's MAGA meltdown. Did you know that there was one? I don't follow Ben Shapiro that closely, but I do know who he is. The Daily Wire, remember that whole thing? It was like super famous and super influential. And I guess just the influencer payments don't last forever, maybe? The Daily Wire was once ascendant in right-wing media, and I mean very ascendant. You should hear what's in this story. Now the anti-woke company, as I guess it calls itself, faces contentious layoffs, ideological battles, and dwindling relevance online. That's good news. This is a May 9th piece, again, in the Washington Post. I don't know if I said it. Drew Harwell is the author. The conservative media company Daily Wire was once a star of the MAGA digital universe, dominating social media feeds and podcast apps with a blend of anti-woke commentary, viral Facebook posts, and culture war stunts. I do remember that, and here's some more detail about it. In the run-up to the 2020 presidential election, the company, co-founded by conservative pundit Ben Shapiro, ranked as Facebook's top English-language publisher for 3 straight months. Its sarcastic news items, and we're much more sarcastic than they are, on then-House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's salon visits, for instance, gained millions more views than the websites of Fox News, CNN, and the New York Times. I definitely remember that being the case and just marveling at the fact of it. But the company now faces sweeping layoffs and heavy skepticism over its online future, with some critics, including former employees such as Candace Owens, arguing its relevance to the right has irrevocably collapsed. Its YouTube channel's subscriber base has plateaued or shrunk in 15 of the 16 months since the start of 2025, according to data from the analytics firm Social Blade. In an analysis of 20 conservative news sites, the Daily Wire is consistently ranked among the biggest year-over-year traffic losers since last summer, but they have lots to lose, of course. According to estimates from the market intelligence firm SimilarWeb that were compiled by the media newsletter The Writing. I don't know any of that crap. In March, the website's traffic was half of what it was the year before. I'd take it, though. The Daily Wire's fall from grace reflects the fragmentation of partisan media online as centralized institutions such as Breitbart and Fox lose attention to a scattered network of podcasters, streamers, and provocateurs. And, of course, now you got to be even more crazy than the next guy, the last guy, in order to gain an audience. And, boy, have they gotten crazy. We haven't gotten to that part yet. And it's not in this article. It's a different one, and it's awful. Though it advertises itself as America's leading voice of the counterculture movement, the Daily Wire now draws criticism that it mirrors the mainstream media giants it once pledged to unravel. That's actually a fairly typical political cycle, honestly. It happens all the time. People do it to AOC, so they're going to do it to the Daily Wire, too. By the way, in case I don't get this thing on the record, and I won't today, when I said influencers and right-wing media provocateurs getting worse and worse, there's a guy who's got a dumb name like Kagro X, but dumber. Chud the Builder. Like, I guess that's supposed to be a play on Bob the Builder, but I don't know why it's a play. Like, Bob and Chud don't rhyme. Anyway, long story short, and we'll read his story eventually. His shtick is he arms himself, straps on a gun, goes out in, I think he's from Tennessee, goes out in public, finds black people to antagonize by baiting them racially, calling them the N-word and worse. And then when they get mad at him, he says to them, "Don't chimp out on me." And then when they say, or they say nothing, or they look like they're going to punch him, he tells them, "If you punch me, I'll shoot you. Stand your ground law." And I guess then he videos all of that and he puts it up, and then racists cheer. Ha ha. You have them dead to rights. You tell them. And then they just have to stand there and take it. This is great. And one of them didn't, I guess, stand there and take it and punched him. So he shot him. And so now he's, I guess, ostensibly in trouble for shooting somebody. He's got to go through the legal process. We'll see whether Stand Your Ground defends you at all. By the way, though, it's also gun fail. He grazed himself with the shot. So my guess is he was shooting one-handed and maybe trying to hold the guy off with the other. Anyhow, not great for him all around. But that's where we are now. Now, to build a popular, influential YouTube channel, you go out, you take a gun with you, and then you call, you find people and racially bait them and call them the N-word and threaten to shoot them if they punch you, and then put the video up. That's all it is. That's the whole channel. Anyway, that makes Ben Shapiro look like a paladin in all of this. So, but he's actually, quite a jackass and a little bit of a scumbag too, on top of it all. But just keep that in mind. You already knew that. The Daily Wire's fall from grace, right? Fragmentation of partisan media online. Now everybody's out for themselves and out gobbling up advertising dollars by yelling racial epithets at people while pointing a gun at them. Although it advertises itself, back to the Daily Wire, as America's leading voice of the counterculture movement, the Daily Wire now draws criticism, right, that it mirrors the mainstream media it once pledged to unravel, and that happens to everybody, but good to see it happening to Daily Wire. Stretched thin by corporate expansion and overly reliant on an outdated business model, these things change quickly. The company's biggest vulnerability may nevertheless be the populist cannibalism consuming Republican politics. And says Nicole Hemmer, a conservative media historian at Vanderbilt University and author of Messengers of the Right. So she's right there in Tennessee. She knows how bad it gets. It's just not about that guy. The company's brand of traditional conservatism, exemplified by Shapiro's intense support of Israel, and it's been wild watching that change, has clashed with right-wing creators promising a more radical brand of anti-incumbent, anti-establishment rage, she said. Ben Shapiro has become the avatar of a strand of conservatism that has been taking it on the chin for years, Hemmer said, and they are now losing favor with the conservative movement, which is as much a problem for Trump as it is for Ben Shapiro. Brad Bishop, a Daily Wire spokesman, said the company had cut 13% of its staff since the beginning of this year and currently has more than 200 employees. Most of the job cuts are centered at the Daily Wire's headquarters in Nashville. Oh, also in Tennessee, huh? Tennessee's awful. But the company retains staff in D.C., Florida, and the Northeast, and will continue to invest in an ambitious slate of new entertainment projects set to release this year, a company statement said. Florida, of course, to cover Pervalago. Anyway, the internet says we are going bankrupt or dying every year, Bishop said, and they are. In a statement, Shapiro said the company's revenue had fallen compared with 2024, and that some moves, including Owens' firing, affected its financial base, but that the company was, quote, not going anywhere and still had cash flow numbers that, quote, dwarf those of our critics. True, in my case. He also sought to put distance between his company's politics and the changing views of critics on the right. While much of the rest of the conservative movement, and that he scare quoted conservative movement, decided it was a good idea to click whore by embracing radical Islam, is that right? Theorizing about the evils of Winston Churchill, extolling the wonders of Russian supermarkets, and mocking the widow of Charlie Kirk. We have decided not to do those things, not Charlie Kirk, but Shapiro said, referring to critics such as Owens and the conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, who turns out to be a lot smaller in impact than, he claims or has built himself up to be. If that's a strategic business failure, then I guess we can live with that. Founded in 2015, the Daily Wire quickly made a name for itself with biting blog items and headlines like, Hillary cackles when asked if she was alone night of Benghazi. Okay. It leaped past traditional conservative journals by building attention through Shapiro's hit podcast and its relentless posting onto Facebook, where its ad-supported business made the bulk of its income. In early 2022, co-founder and chief executive Jeremy Boring, that's right, Boreing, said the company had grown to 150 employees and $100 million in yearly revenue. The company expanded into projects far beyond the conventional work of a right-wing blog It invested in feature films, including a Western called Terror on the Prairie, never heard of it, and a school shooting thriller, thank God I never heard of that one, called Run, Hide, Fight. It launched a publishing division, printing a book by one of the Louisville police officers who fatally shot Breonna Taylor inside her home. Now, that's controversial enough. In 2022, the company launched a video streaming service, Daily Wire Plus, which Boring said marked the beginning of an aggressive technological and content expansion. Then, a year later, Boring announced that the company would invest $100 million into a second network, Bent Key, focused on children's shows, which is gross. The programming, he said, would compete with Disney, which he accused of working to indoctrinate kids into the LGBTQIA cult, if you were wondering just how crazy they actually are. We're way behind. Time to hand things over, of course, to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. How about another paragraph or two before we exit from this long story? The company took swings at Hollywood with movies like Lady Ballers, a comedy directed by and starring Boring, amazingly enough, about a group of men who play women's sports. Guess what? Wow. Some of them paid off, including the 2024 satirical documentary Am I Racist? You Are, that grossed more than $12 million somehow on a $3 million budget, box office figures show. But the cost and scale of those wild projects, we are nowhere near that, right? Well, I'll make movies. Raised some eyebrows, even among some of the Daily Wire's biggest fans, said Howard Polskin, a media analyst who runs The Writing. It all seemed like a huge overreach, Polskin said. Their ambitions were so huge and the stuff seemed like a quick way to go broke. Some of the Daily Wire's biggest names exuded confidence with the business, including Boring, who told Puck in late 2024 that the company would be a $10 billion business and had played a role in Trump's victory. That it had, of course. Shortly before, Matt Walsh, the podcaster and star of Am I Racist, had posted a video on Twitter showing an MSNBC commercial for the movie and saying he was giddy about the cost. Daily Wire is losing thousands of dollars running those ads to an audience that will not subscribe or watch the film. Somehow he thought that was really great. I will waste as much of the Daily Wire's money as it takes just to make sure that every MSNBC viewer has been sufficiently traumatized. Wow, it's pretty weird. I don't even know if you could hear that over the announcement, but it is time for me to shut up so that you can hear Justice Putnam bring you the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. Top of his list for today, Trump is causing an Arctic Cold War as he initiates credible threats against poor old Greenland and Canada. We'll see you tomorrow.